Hey guys, I'm so glad you're back. Behavior Strategies for Class here. This is where we empower you with effective behavior management skills that work so you can teach. And this month, we're talking about strategies and helping you become more equipped so that you thrive in your classroom as well with predictable systems, relational strategies, and concrete tools that will help you respond to that challenging behavior with skill and not stress. So, today we're going to talk about those relational strategies because one of the most important and powerful tools for shaping behavior is relationships. So, if you've listened to this podcast at all, we do talk about how important it is to have those relationships with your students, getting them to feel safe and comfortable and ready to engage in their learning. Because too often behavior is framed as a problem to be fixed. But it's that mind shift where we learn that behavior is communication. Relationships can be the bridge to understanding their behavior. So, from building trust and safety to using connection as a tool for redirection, today we're going to walk through some practical approaches that you can begin using tomorrow. And this is going to be with Andrew Smith, our behavior expert, behavior coach, behavior facilitator, who has all of this information with great strategies and tools for you to use. So don't forget to also check out the show notes because he gives us a lot of resources that I will post for you there. Welcome to Behavior Strategies for Class. I am Diane Bachman, your behavior paraprofessional with over 15 years of experience working in special education. And I'm so glad you're here because I'll be teaching you about social emotional learning, behavior strategies, trauma-informed care, and more. So if you are tired of being frustrated and not knowing what to do with your students who have challenging and disruptive behavior, you're in the right place. Now, if you're ready to become more equipped to help your students learn and grow, let's listen in to today's episode. So before we get started, I want to encourage you, hit that subscribe button, share this episode or this podcast with other educators that you know so that we continue to learn and grow together. This is our monthly chat with behavior coach expert Andrew Smith. Welcome.
Howdy.
We are going to be talking about relational strategies. Now, this month we're talking about tools and strategies, relational strategies, like I said, and predictable systems that you can use and get your kids ready to thrive. Because once they know the expectations, know the routines, you alleviate some of that stress and anxiety for them. And so today we're going to talk about relational strategies and how those can help you and your students connect, which is, if you've listened to this podcast at all, or even a little bit, you know how important that we believe that connection and relationship is with your students. So we're going to give you some practical tips and tools that you can use to help your students thrive. All right, Andrew. So let's start off with one. What is one relational strategy that educators can put into place right now?
Good question. I like the topic because everybody's always wanting to have, okay, that's great. You talk all about this connection thingy, like, okay, how do I do it? Like
All right.
most educators I work with, they're like, yeah, I'm all for that, but what's that look like?
Yeah.
So one really popular one that I like to talk about is a 2 by 10 strategy. And this, not from me, this has been around for a long time. And we'll have a link to it. Panorama Education has it. But 2 by 10 is a very simple thing of spending 2 minutes 10 times. So, in a perfect world where there's no fire drills, where there's no like
Right.
last minute changes or like shuffling math and science around, 10 days in a row, 2 weeks, you spend 2 minutes each day talking to a kid about nothing about school, nothing about school. Find out like, hey, if you were, I don't know, if you were your favorite dessert, what would you be?
Yeah.
Or, what's your power animal? Right? Like, were you born under Sagittarius? I don't know.
Right.
Just something that has absolutely nothing to do with school to try and get to know them a little bit more. And so, what that process does is that shows that you're investing in them. And we always talk about connection as a function of relationship and
Right.
attunement and attachment and everything like that. So, you're demonstrating healthy attachment by taking an interest in them outside of just their ability to do math, right? But you're also demonstrating and modeling and demonstrating that an adult can have a good interest in a kid and want to know. And the other part is that this isn't just you asking the kid. It's not like, hey, Jay, Doctor, hey, Doc, I'm really messing up my words. Hey, Dr. J, what's this? And hey, Dr. J, what's that? Hey, what's your favorite thing? Okay, now what's your favorite this? It's not that. It's, oh, you would rather be Mrs. B, you'd rather be a brookie if that was your favorite thing. I really love pecan pie. So you're gonna tell them about you too, because attunement and attachment needs to go both ways. It's not just a one-way street, right? We got to be going both ways to be able to create that connection at the strongest and to demonstrate it's safe for me to talk to them too.
Right.
And it's not going to be just me trying to, correct them all the time, right?
Right.
One of the sayings is connect before correct. This is one of those things where you
Hmm.
connect with. In 2 minutes, I wouldn't spend too much more in that. And that's a practical amount of time, right? Between transition periods, got a little bit of fluff time between like after lunch, before you get something else started for your next subject. Or if you're just waiting on specialists and to, be done with one class and to another, you can just talk about that really quickly in any situation. So, and be a little wild with it. Like, I imagine that your favorite color that you like to talk about is orange on the weekends. Maybe it is, but guess what?
Right.
More often you're gonna be wrong, but they're gonna then tell you, like, no, I like purple. You're being crazy. Um, what's your favorite? I have not been asked what my favorite dinosaur is since I was in second grade, and apparently I'm carrying a little bit of a grudge about that. I got a little beef about that. Like, I'm
Somebody ask
salty that
him.
nobody's asked me that. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
but even just that, like, it starts getting that just that nice humor cuts some of the stress, and it just
Right.
invests and pours into the kids. And some of our kids don't have anybody that's interested in them. Right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to know. Nobody's asking them what their favorite thing is or if their
Right.
shoes make them run faster since they're brand new, right?
Yeah.
So why not be that one person for them? And that creates that strong relationship in a
Right.
safe and loving way to show that, hey, we're gonna do some hard things. I'm gonna ask you to do some things, right? I'm gonna ask you to follow my rules. I'm gonna ask you to do
Right.
those things. But the other part is that I want to know some fun things about you. And then
That's
use that
awesome.
later. If dinosaurs comes up, be like, Johnny over here,
You're ready.
he was talking to Dr. J. I heard him the other day. He's got brontosaurus as his favorite one. So he's gonna come up and read about the brontosaurus part. Why
Yeah.
not use that? Because that's gonna make their day.
I totally agree. And I love that this strategy is super easy and you can do it anytime. Like even on your way, to the cafeteria at lunch, or maybe like right after they get their lunch, talk to him for a couple of minutes and then you go have your lunch. Or even like at our school, the kids have an afternoon recess. And like that would be a perfect time to grab one of your students and, like you said, like maybe 3 or 4 questions and just kind of back and forth and then be like, okay, go play. and you've made that connection without them, of course, really even realizing like what you guys just did, you know? So I love that strategy. I think that is super helpful, super easy, and super beneficial for both.
And yeah, and you can modify it too. That's the other part. I worked with an amazing counselor. She left and is in private practice now. Whitney. I don't know if you're listening to this or not, but she was awesome. And so as a specialist, you had the whole school, or if you're in middle school. So what she would do is she would do minute interviews. And I know
Oh,
some other teachers who would do 3 or 4 kids, and every Friday they would do lunch bunch rotations. And
I love
they
that.
just have a predictable routine of like,
Yeah.
you're this week is these 3 or 4, this blue group or whatever, and
Right.
then or it's the the Jedi group or whatever, and so you can modify it to make it work any which way, and it doesn't require anything other than you investing a little bit of time, and maybe spending some time at lunchtime or those free times. Um, but it gives you a chance to get to know the kids in a lot different way. So we're holistically looking at a kid rather than just subject specific.
Yes. Because that investment, like you said, it's invaluable. Like it's going to go a long way with that student when they hit a wall with maybe whatever lesson you're teaching, or maybe they end up having some behavior issues. You can be able to relate to them and maybe bring up something that you guys discussed and learned about each other. And that kind of breaks that ice in that moment so that you can again connect and help that student get back to accessing their learning. So that is super beneficial. And like I said, easy. You can do it any time of day. The lunch bunch is great. We used to do that, at the previous school that we both worked at. And the kids really love that. And a lot of the other like gen ed kids who are not in our program would be like, "What's going on over there? Why are they always over there?" Because they
They have a
see
little
like
prestige, yeah.
yeah, like we're having fun, getting to chat and take the time to do that, I think is super important.
And not to brag, but that's when you throw out the really bad dad jokes, just make it good, right?
Right.
So
And
just
the
have
kids
some fun.
nowadays are always like, "Well, I can run faster than you, Miss Bachman." Yeah, I know you can. He's like, no, really. Yeah, I know. Really, I know you can.
You found out the other day, right?
I'm like, yeah, I totally
But what's
believe you.
bringing you back are the jokes. Telling you.
So, what is another strategy that teachers can use?
Another strategy is just kind of how you conceptualize how how to follow up with something. So that goes back to more the restorative practices, right? Do we do we
Right.
do punishment or do we do relearning? And that's
Yeah.
a big topic right there, especially
Yeah.
in our school systems and just in our society right now. Are we
Right.
here about the just applying consequences, you know, or are we here about, yeah, those are the consequences that happen. Let's relearn. So restorative practices is
Hmm.
becoming more and more em embedded in a lot of things. And that tends to be um, ways to just relearn, reteach, but also teach impact and accountability,
Hmm.
right? Like,
Hmm.
yeah, hey, Johnny, what you did wasn't great, and we got some consequences for that. But one
Yeah.
of the consequences you didn't foresee, because sometimes we have kids that will think it through and be like, yeah, that's worth it. For me
Hmm.
to get out of math or for me to get out of this class with this person,
Yeah.
I will absolutely do this. Um,
Yeah.
Like I've thought about it. It's worth it. I am down for that half a day in suspension because I just can't stand it. But what they don't realize is the effect that they're having on peers or their favorite people, right?
Right.
So the fact that like I tore apart this classroom and I kicked somebody, well, you kicked your para,
Right.
right? This is the person who's day in, day out, like trying to make things fun, trying to just love on you and give you some kudos,
Hmm.
and you ended up hurting them on purpose. And that's not something you foresaw. So we gotta figure out a way to make that better. and then
Yeah.
enlisting them to be as part of that of like, how would you, so if Smith ran in and kicked you in the shin, how would you
Yeah.
feel for one? And that builds that
Right.
empathy piece because now they got to start identifying like that hurts. That would
Right.
be confusing. Like, I don't know why he's doing that. And I'd get a little mad about it. I might want to kick him back. You go through that whole gamut of emotions. So they got to identify those. And then they got to start thinking about the impact and how to make it better. And so that's where those building relationships that can be part of the restorative practices, but also the repairing. And sometimes that takes a very one-to-one interaction, and
Hmm.
sometimes that's like closing circles of like, hey, we had a big thing that happened. I'm gonna let your friends who were involved with this kind of say their piece of it, and
Right.
then I want you to see if there's something that you want to say to them. So it gives them a chance to kind of repair that part and to make things better, not only just to the person, but to the community around them too. So
Right.
that takes a little bit more intentional work to set up,
Right.
um, but it can be part of your classroom routines and your classroom
Hmm.
expectations. Um, and then you're closing and opening circles that go with a lot of SEL curriculums.
Right.
Like there's restorative practices in the classroom, which obviously has that very embedded, and I think those ones do, if I'm remembering right, closing circles, but a lot of them will do opening circles. There's like capturing kids' hearts, that
Hmm.
the greetings and the opening circles and things like
Right.
that. And a lot of districts around here are doing SEL kind of first thing in the morning because
Hmm.
then you can kind of get a feel and a flow for the day.
Right.
You can set some kids up for kudos and things like that that'll just help them get through the day. So
Hmm.
they can be very easily integrated back into that, and you're probably already doing that, to be honest, in
Hmm.
a lot of places. I mean, it just makes good sense and it seems very intuitive. Having those repairing conversations and just the support for not only the people who witnessed or were the receiving end of an action or you know consequences, but also
Right.
for the people who had the behavior too, because everybody needs support in that sense. And this is school; they're learning, right? We got 7,
Exactly.
8, 9, 14 year olds, that need that support because they don't. Sometimes they just don't quite know how to handle some of those things. So being
Hmm.
able to kind of integrate some of those things, and that takes a different philosophical approach, for the most part, of just like we need to repair this rather than just slam down with consequences. I had a principal who was like, I don't want to have to lower the boom, but I think their friends already lowered the boom on them anyway when they shut them
Yeah.
out, right? After
Yeah.
kiddo was having a big thing. So then she worked with
Hmm.
them to get back into it. And that was obviously a Navy area because that's about all the Navy verbiage I know. I think the boom's something on one of the ships.
Yeah.
I
I
grew up in the
don't
Air Force family, so
know.
like, well, with one Navy outcast, not outcast, but but one of my uncles was Navy, so but he was on a submarine, so I don't know if anyway.
Yeah.
But the other part being that we could consecrate the hell out of somebody, but to be honest with
Right.
you, the better part will be when we work to have them learn about why they affected things and how. So
Right.
restorative practices is a very big thing that are getting integrated into a lot of different areas in education, especially in primary, to be able to
Yeah.
kind of set that foundation. And very much kind of what we talk about all the time, that base layer of everything is building that relationship so you can have those conversations,
Right.
going back to depositing into that relationship bank as much as we can, those 5 to 1s, right? Because you're gonna have to do a withdrawal every once in a while, and if you haven't put anything in, as my bank account in college used to tell me, you got nothing to draw out.
Nothing. Yeah. Well, those are so true. I think of a lot of our students, we've mostly called it like we process with them, after they have de-escalated and they're at a spot where they can have that conversation. I excuse me, I think of one of our kinders who every now and then has had some explosive behaviors and, throws some chairs on the ground and crayons or toys or whatever is near him. And we're usually able to get him out to go help him de-escalate. And then once he's calm and we can have that conversation, then we're like, okay, well, what do we need to do to go fix it or, make it right? Well, we're gonna have to go back to your classroom. Like you have to clean up by myself. Well, for the most part, yeah. Like if you need help, like picking up the chairs, some of them were on the table because it was the end of the day. And so we helped a little bit, but then it's like we're cleaning up and then his gen ed teacher was there and it's like, well, you need to go talk to your teacher. And so they were able to restore that as well. And, she gave her feedback and he kind of shared a little bit. So again, like you said, it comes back to that foundation and building that relationship and that connection. And not that he's never going to have an outburst in there again, but he knows like he's going to be okay, right?
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world. You are not locked out of, recess forever. Sometimes they do have to miss that, but other times it just depends on what the situation was. Like she talked with him and she's like, he can go back outside now and go out to recess. So it's great to be able to get that connection, to get that restoration back in that relationship, like you said, and
Absolutely.
just restore what kind of exploded, in the classroom. So, yes, it definitely takes more time. And maybe you can't do it like right in the moment, or maybe somebody else needs to talk to them and then they'll come back and talk with you. We did that a lot with Carrie Manzo when we worked with
Mhm.
her
Yeah.
as one of the counselors. So, whatever works and how your building is and whatever mental health staff you have, being able also to connect with them is a great way to build that relationship and teach those restorative practices as well. What do you think, Andrew?
Oh, absolutely. That was one of the better parts of my job, or the best parts about my job, aside from getting to know the kids, was being able to help with those conversations when I was working in the classroom as a school counselor.
Yeah,
Um, and it's just so vital to be able to say that because, I have kids I work with who are like, I don't like that those things happen, but I know I'm going to be safe because my team is going to love me no matter what happens.
right.
And so, the whole goal was that maybe we're not getting to like zero behaviors. We love that. Don't get me wrong.
Of course.
Yeah, overall, like long-term goal is like zero and you're all good. But maybe the goal for that week or that month or just for that kiddo for right now is being able to bounce back and not lose the entire day from it.
Right,
And for them to show up the next day, right?
right.
Because some kids, that's that it's a huge guilt and shame response, and we need to let them know
Hmm.
that it's okay that you had that response. We need to make it better because we still accept you and still love you, and
Right,
let's find a different way,
right.
right? And the acceptance, and that's something I truly believe in. And I know Carrie Manzo, myself, and being able to love kids and to have them show up was one of her biggest jams,
Yeah,
aside from 80s hair metal.
for sure.
But um, and she's the one who taught me a lot about that, about just these kids, they need love and they need to be able to show that. And sometimes that means accepting, and that means kind of not holding that grudge, having a short memory, kind of like Ted Lasso says, be a goldfish,
Right.
so that the next day can be a brand new thing, and we can still accept and love on
Exactly.
the kids.
Exactly. So, what would be another relational strategy that we can use?
This one does take a little bit of paper, but interview the kids. Like, so if you're spending your 2 by 10, so those are great. If you get into your lunch bunches, have some time to interview the kids and have the kids interview you, right? I love doing that. And that was there's a program that we used to do called Path to Empathy. Um, and it was very much about that. And so, one of the building blocks for empathy, which is so important for relational strategies,
Right.
but one of the biggest building blocks for that is respect and getting to know somebody. The more you know about them, the more likely you are to give them respect. And so this program was a small program that got pretty big, especially with they ended up having some more corporate things, retreats and trainings and things like that, because they had a really great product. Um, but you would do some different interviews to learn about the community around you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm a big fan, and that was one of the programs I started learning after I got done with my master's program. uh, was this Path to Empathy program, and it just really laid down foundations for it. And one of the biggest parts, the student interview or the community interview. So we would bring in community members. We had our board come in, and where we were, the board was. There's a little bit contention about like running for the board. There's always a little bit small town politics start coming out when you start talking about
Mm-hmm.
school board elections and things like this. But to see them come in and like work with the kids was huge. Or to
Yeah.
bring in, these kids would pick their favorite person in the school. And maybe that's the lunch lady, maybe that's the custodian and janitor. And sometimes we'd have our superintendent come in, right? For some of the kids, and they got to interview
Right.
that. And some parents that are like PTO and or PTA or they're huge
Right.
volunteers. Like these are people that they make connections with, um, to be able to get to know them as much as possible. And the more you know about somebody, the more respect you're about to give, you're liable to give, and the more respect you're liable to give, that domino effect of leading towards empathy. And if you
Right.
know, and this was something I learned from going to a small Catholic school that my aunts and uncles went to, my kids went there for a
Uh-oh.
couple years, right? Is like if you know that if you're gonna mess up, you're gonna hear it from grandma, you're gonna hear it from Mrs. Blackford when she was there, or Mrs. Damerel, and then I'm gonna hear it from mom. Um,
Right.
and grandpa, who knows? Grandpa might say something about it. So that's five people that are gonna rattle my chain if I do something wrong. But it just goes to show the ripple effects too of
Right.
what your actions are and how much you are a part of the community.
Yeah.
And so being able to have some of those different interviews can be very vital to not only pour into somebody, but to just to know more. Um, and remember, 2 by 10 works because we're going both ways. Have them interview you. So
Yeah.
found a fun one that was like, I really love this one because you could tell that we're mostly in elementary. Like
Yeah.
if I had to go to Target, what am I going to buy? Or if I forgot my lunch, what am I going to eat?
Yeah.
The younger kids love saying that, right? Or taking some wild guesses on it. Like, I don't know, bubblegum ice cream. Like, what about me? Looks like I got bubblegum ice cream on mine, but it's just a fun way for them to start being able to invest in you then too.
Right.
So interviewing, and we'll put a couple links in for that. But
Yes.
there's a couple free interviews, and they're all over the place, just to be able to give you a form and start going off of that. And sometimes teachers really feel like that having a form in front of them gives them kind of that permission or that just that like roadway to be able to do that rather
Mm-hmm.
than kind of generating on their own, which I can totally understand because
Yeah.
sometimes it feels a little bit out of your wheelhouse, and that's okay. We can all do hard things.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just thinking like even having the principal come in, and doing that interview with the principal. I think the kids would definitely get a kick out of that. Um, just another side note to that strategy.
Absolutely.
What do you think about the goals? Like
Okay.
setting behavior goals or just setting goals for the day or the week? I mean, what do you think about that?
I like goals. I really do. And they tend to go hand in hand really well with it. If you have star charts or like face charts, or if you do a check-in, check-out system, a good part of that is having a goal. So I
Hmm.
I always like to say you need three different goals. You need to have a long-term goal. Like that's that zero. Usually we all want to get to zero, right? Or 100% safety if we can, right?
Right.
So that's that one that's like the whole year long, we're trying to get there. We need a mid-range one. So I don't know, maybe by Christmas time we'll be at 50% of Mrs. B, not throwing food during lunchtime,
Right. We'll
right?
try.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll hit 40%. I don't know.
Maybe.
Um, and then like a daily or a weekly one. And all of those are going to be kind of fluid, just with how kids respond and how everything is. And we do that for so many other things. There's so many times that we do that for MAP. We
Right.
do that for state testing. We do that for CSAs, and all
Right.
those other things that are really important too, like with all the academics. So having some goals is pretty helpful. Now, the whole part of goals, though, is make sure that they're achievable. So it's making sure that they're smart goals,
Right.
specific, measurable, like they're applicable. You're not promising something you can't do all the time. Like they hit their goal every week. Are you giving them fluffy puppies every week? Like if you can't, then don't promise that. So, on
Exactly.
your end, make it sure that it's more of like an appropriate, like practical goal on that end. But then
Right.
follow up with that. And the biggest part with any of those goals is associating your praise with it too.
Yes.
Because a lot of kids will develop intrinsic motivation on their own, but not everybody does. And a lot of times there's an extrinsic motivating factor before we build the intrinsic.
Mm-hmm.
That's just kind of part of human nature. Like we're hearing it from everybody else and we start talking about it a lot. And so then we get that internal drive to it. And there are just some that comes naturally, just like math does. And then there are others that hasn't been a thing for them, so we want to make sure that we praise them and they get their
Yes.
goal and then the applicable reward on the end because that's going to give you the best bang for your buck when you're
Right.
talking
Because
goals and
who's not
motivation.
motivated for that, right?
Yeah. And sometimes it's we sometimes think that we get stuck in like the bigger the reward, the better it's going to be. And sometimes it's not.
Right.
Most often about with check in, check out, it is not the tangible reward they get at the end. It is the time that they spend with you, which
Yeah.
is the biggest part, going back to building that relationship
Yeah.
foundation. And I've had kids that have chosen more often than not a 2-minute dance party than than anything a prize bucket would. I had
That's
one kiddo
awesome.
that I worked with in Washington, who's an amazing kid. Um, really loved working with him, had a hard life. He decided that he didn't want tangible rewards for him. He wanted to earn things for his class.
Oh,
And that teacher, she was awesome. I talked her into it one time of doing paper airplanes with the class. And so he
that's
worked for
awesome.
2 weeks to earn a paper airplane. I don't even know what we called it. We called it like a rally, no, rally, not a rally, like an air show or something like that. And we all made paper airplanes last 5-10 minutes of the day. And
That's
we
so
flew 'em. We
cool.
tried to fly them, see who could do loop-de-loops, who had the craziest design, who could fly the farthest, all those kinds of things. And he loved that.
Yeah.
And so all that took was a little bit of copy paper, some
Right.
cleanup, but
Exactly.
that was so much better than anything a prize bucket could give him.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, we used to have like again, lunch with the teacher or even a special lunch. One of our teachers, she would buy pizza. So if they wanted a pizza lunch and they could invite, two or three friends to come have lunch with them. Like you said, sometimes it's just that quality time. Sometimes some of the kids are like, and the little trinkets and prizes that we get for the most part, um, they don't last. By the time they get on the bus, they go home like it's already broken. So that it doesn't have as much value as, like you said, that time that you've invested or allowed them to be like just with their friends. Just sit with your friends and have a good time. Like talk about whatever. We don't. adults, we feel like we have to be sometimes in everything, right? We have to be involved in every little thing that they're doing, and we have to be there to support. And obviously, ultimately, yes, that's why we're there. But just to be able to give them those minutes to be by themselves and just be kids, I think sometimes we lose that importance of them just being kids, just hang out, talk about whatever. So that was always fun to see the students pick those prizes over, like you said, just little trinkets to win. So that, of course, takes a little more planning as well, but it's such great rewards if you're able to put in just a little more. And I don't obviously want to put more on your plate. Like we know you guys work so hard and but these still are little strategies that you can involve throughout the day, or maybe it's just once a week. Maybe it's just once a week that you can do this. And that's okay. Whatever works for your schedule was still going to have benefits. It's still going to be invaluable for you and your students. What do you think, Andrew?
Absolutely. Sometimes just that little tweak is all it takes for kids to
Yeah.
feel like I was seen, I was heard, I'm loved, I'm good there. And
Yeah.
that's the foundation, and that's that relationship strategy. And it's not always going to be roses. There's some thorns with that, but that helps you get to the buds really quickly. I'm trying to keep that flower metaphor going, but you know, soon enough they're going to bloom. There you go. I tied it up. That's a
There
nice
you
little
go.
bow right
Nice.
there.
Perfect. And if I could go back and, of course, give a plug for a behavior journal that I created and is available on Amazon. The link will be in the show notes, but that has daily um, behavior goals. I feel like sometimes it's overwhelming for some of your students to be like, oh man, I got to work on this like this whole week. Even that is overwhelming sometimes to them. So if they're able to just write down in their journal, and obviously you don't have to buy my journal, but you should because it is very beneficial.
I've got
And
one.
there's a color wheel in there that is the emotional wheel, for them. And then also to get them in gratitude, let them think about what are they thankful for? Because again, they can feel that overwhelm, that anxiety, the stress of my behavior and I really have to work on this and just we're trying to help them and shape that behavior every day, but we know it can get overwhelming for them. So to teach them to come back and be like, okay, hey, take a minute. What are you thankful for right now? And then have them write, well, what do you need to work on? And it doesn't have to be obviously a huge essay. It could be one word, or not blurting or not hitting, whatever it is. I think it's super helpful because I think um, I want to say there's some science behind like writing down your goals, whereas just verbally saying them or even thinking them, that it really just kind of ingrains it when you physically write it down. Is that true, Andrew? Have you heard that?
Absolutely. It engages different parts of the brain, right? When
Yeah.
you're verbally just saying it, all you're using well, not all you're using, but you're using the hearing section of your brain. When you're writing it down, you have just the touch and the tactile part, and it activates different memory programs and circuits in your brain, as well as just the psychological factor of if I write it down,
Yeah.
I feel more of an obligation to complete it. And that's where, um, some people, that's the difference between their New Year's resolution fizzling out
Oh,
after two
right.
weeks at the gym and lasting longer than that and actually making it a habit. It takes some of that investment. And if you can set yourself up for success right from the get-go by writing it out, you're that much farther ahead.
Yeah. All right, so let's leave with this last saying. I want to see what your thoughts are on this. And I've heard this before where it talks about praise in public and correct in private. What are your thoughts on that, Andrew, for
Okay.
relational strategy?
Um, it works very well with a lot of the kids. A lot of the kids that need that extra bit, they come, maybe it's trauma, maybe it's some mental health concerns, maybe, they're working on puberty and different things like that. So they want to save face in front of their friends. They don't want to feel othered, right? That you're just a kid with ADHD. You're always one of those other kids, right? Or maybe they're just so scared of that correction leading to something different, so that when it's a one-on-one, it feels a lot easier. That when you've built that relationship foundation, then they know that I'm still gonna love you, but I gotta tell you, like, that wasn't a great move. Let's make a different move, right?
Mm.
Make that different choice, and that gives them the ability to then process and think about it without feeling like the spotlight is on them in front of like a ton of other people.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan of that. I tend to try and do that as much as possible.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for me, that just like brought back memories. Like I hated being picked out, for whatever I was doing, and I was always talking too much. Weird, I know. Um, and so to be called out in front of everybody, like you said, you're just like mortified. And to me, that definitely did not motivate me to not keep talking. It motivated me to not get caught talking. But like I just never liked that. Like even as parenting, you've seen some parents where they're just like, Johnny, like freaking out. Um, where it's like, you know what, you could have just pulled him aside and just like said, hey, let's not do that, or whatever it is. Um,
Yeah,
anyways, just my
I'm
thoughts.
I'm a big fan of, like, I usually, for whatever reason, kids tend to like do something and then they look at me. And so I try to like keep the eye contact and like make a just a tad bit awkward, but and then just quick shake their head like, mm-mm, not a great one.
Exactly.
And so many of them, that's all they need
That's
is
all
like,
it takes. Yeah.
he saw that, Smith's creeping out, but I'm gonna turn around so that that doesn't happen again, right? And so, because sometimes you just can't like pull a kid right out of there,
Right.
and
Yeah.
like into the hallway. Like, you shouldn't be pulling kids for one thing, but you know what I mean. Like, you
Right.
can't
Right.
step aside on someone. So I tend to just make the awkward eye contact and quick shake of the head, like,
Yeah.
not a great move, dude. Move on.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that when they're like, oh, wait, you saw that? Or wait, what? Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, don't do it again. Like
I
we
either want
had,
to teach you to be more subtle about it or just not
yeah,
at all. I'm not sure which.
like one student at lunch, um, like stood up and smacked his friend like in the face. But I knew they were messing around, so I just went over and I'm like, dude, I know you're messing around. Don't do it again. Like you're gonna get busted. But yeah, well, thank you so much, Andrew. Do you have any other closing thoughts that you'd like to share?
Aside from tricks are for kids, nope. That's all I got.
Well, thankfully, you gave us some other vital relational strategies that you guys can start using right away. And I will have all the links to all of his valuable resources in the show notes and the link to the behavior journal that your students can use right away as well. So, thanks so much again, Andrew, for being here and sharing your expertise.
Pleasure's all mine.
We'll see you next time. Thanks so much for listening. I truly appreciate your support. And if I have encouraged you, motivated you to continue to learn, to support your students, even better, to help them strive in your classroom, please leave a review, hit that subscribe button so that others can see they can learn and grow here as well. Thank you.